Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the first edition, the 2022 January edition of Coffee and Conversations, although we are doing this in the afternoon. It will be shown in the afternoon, so we might have to think of, I don't know, cocktails and conversation. I don't know. We'll figure that out. But as I was doing a lot of thinking over the holidays about what would be a good topic to kind of launch the next year of Coffee and Conversations with. And what came to me was this idea of next chapters of reinvention. The older you get and the more you have to look back on, and maybe less you have to look forward to in terms of time, this idea that you can do different things, that you can be maybe not a different person, but be different in some way, achieve something that seemed out of bounds. I don't know, just this whole idea that you're not stuck, like life is evolutionary for all of this. And I actually think about my mother from time to time. She had a very bleak childhood in the 20s and 30s. They were farmers, Swedish farmers in Iowa, and lost the farm in the Depression. She was the seventh child, the last child. And, it was rough. And later in life, she collected these incredible teddy bears. And her comment was, Leslie, it's never too late to have a happy childhood. So there's always that part of reinvention as well. So anyway, as I'm thinking about this theme, there are two women that immediately pop into my mind, and they are with us today. I want to introduce Bernice Ross and Coni Meyers. I realize that most of you know them and probably know them fairly well by this point, but for those of you that don't, you are in for a real treat because they are icons in our industry. They have been influencers before we knew what the word influencer was, and they have also done just fairly dramatic changes over their careers that I think will surprise you. So I'm just very honored to have you both here today, and I appreciate it, and I know it's going to be a really interesting conversation. So before I turn it over to you guys, let me just briefly, for those that don't know you, brief bios on both. So you may not know, but Bernice is a professor emeritus of psychology. She is also the CEO and president of Brokerage Up and realestatecoach.com. She is an international author, speaker, and trainer. She's been in the business for over 35 years, published over 1,400 articles and 7 books. Inman News called Bernice America's top real estate coach. And since 2007, she has been actively involved in supporting women in leadership through her AFIRE, Awesome Females in Real Estate Leadership Conference, as well as being an incredible partner in Women Up. So Bernice, kudos and thank you for being here. Coni is a crisis management and leadership strategist, and I just can't think of two things that probably go together better than those two. She is a 6-time international best-selling author and trainer. Her vision is to help 30 million people be better prepared for disasters and other crises, and she and I have talked about this over the last few years, and you will be amazed. She spent 7 years as a FEMA instructor and trainer, founded a national home inspection business and an online real estate education company. She has helped thousands of people with their leadership, marketing, and sales skills, and has tremendous credentials for life, business, and leadership coaching, as well as authoring many online courses, including the Crisis Knowledge Management Certification, which I know that we'll be hearing more about. She also wrote a master course called Kick Butt Leadership, and Kick Butt is when mindfulness meets vision, opportunity, and engagement. So there you are with the incredible criteria, but let's just start talking. So the first question I want to ask you together is, because I kind of met Bernice first, and then I met Coni at AFIRE, but I got the feeling you guys went back a little bit further. So how did you both meet?
Well, Leslie, one thing, we can't use a fire anymore because that is the trademark
I
of the
remember
American
that. I'm
Foreign
so
Investors in
sorry.
Real Estate. So we have to say awesome females. And I think that's a
Awesome
better
females.
description for the people sitting here today.
Bad
That's a,
habits die
yeah,
hard. Awesome
get out
females,
of here.
duly noted. Now, back to the question, how did you two meet?
I don't remember. I'm going to throw this to you.
Okay, well, the way that I recall it is that you were introduced to me at one of the California Association of Realtors meetings by, and I can't remember his name. He did video. He's from Maine, and I can't recall the gentleman's name, but I think he introduced us. And then we had a couple meetings after that. And then you invited me to Awesome Females for the first time.
Right.
I think you'd only been doing it 1 year. I think you had 1 year before the year that I came the first time.
Okay.
Well, that dates us back to 2008 because we've done 2007. So, anyway, very
14
happy
years
for the
and
friendship
counting.
that's come out of that. And Leslie, one of the great things that Awesome Females has done is linked so many. Yeah, I know you had asked why did I start this? I wrote a book back in 2005 called Waging War on Real Estate's Discounters. And, life kind of circles around, and I'm going to come back and revisit that here in 2022, but with a new version of it, because it's more needed than ever. But I had like 45, 50 speaking gigs that year all over the country. And I kept meeting all these amazing women. And I thought how great it would be to introduce them to each other. I'm kind of one of those connector people. I like doing
You are.
introductions.
You are.
So we started out with 21 people. The first one, Leslie, was, a founding member, and she's going to be back in 22. And I know, Coni, you are too. So I'm so excited about
It's
that.
on my calendar.
Yes, we've been apart and we've been virtual for 2 years. I'm so ready for hugs and everything that goes with having a live conference. But that's how it got started. And what's been amazing to me about this journey, I almost stopped in 2013 because we were losing money pretty bad. And then, as I look back and I listen to what's happened in terms of the connection and the differences in people's lives, and they start telling me this conference did this for me, or I met this person now who's one of my closest friends ever, and this came from this conference. And I thought, you can't put a monetary value on that. And that was a big pivotal shift for me at that moment. And at this point, it's a labor of love. God takes care of you in other places. You give over here and you receive elsewhere. And that's one of the takeaways too. I think we sometimes look for our rewards in the place that we're putting our time in, but you really need is when you give, it shows up in other places.
And you were really it was new ground. There wasn't a place for women in real estate. At least I wasn't aware of that until Awesome Females, where we could come together and really talk about real stuff. It was a mashup of all these various components of our lives. So it was really a moment, and it's certainly the seeds of that were in Women Up many years later. Well, let me, Coni, I'd love to hear about something in your career that you are proud of, and can kind of give us an idea of what it was and how it happened.
Well, I have to tell you, I used to tell people that I was like a cat. I had 9 careers, but in reality, it's actually that every single thing I did since my mid-20s was in training for what I'm doing today. And if it hadn't been for my husband passing, I wouldn't be doing it. I'd be living the same old life I had lived before. Actually, and Bernice played a very key role in helping me to move forward when he passed. It was a couple months after he had passed that she invited me to come to Awesome Females. I wasn't sure. She said, I understand that we don't know when he's going to go and what's going to happen, because she saw me a couple months before. And I was very hesitant to go because I was fairly raw still,
Right.
and I wasn't sure. But when I went, she had already let people know, which, by the way, she called me every week the whole time that Tom was sick, FYI, to reach out to me. And she would say, how's Tom? And then she'd say, okay, let's talk about you. Now that's what a real friend does, right? Anyway, so I went to Awesome Females and I was concerned about how I was going to hold up and all of that. Well, I was met with nothing but open arms at Awesome Females. So I think for me, that was a true turning point. I always tell people the best gift and the most wonderful gift Tom ever gave me was in his passing. And if it wasn't for Awesome Females, and because my life is 180 degrees different than what it was prior to that. And I thank him every day because I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. I wouldn't know all the beautiful women that I know in Woman Up. I wouldn't be going to my 14th Awesome Females if I had not, if he hadn't passed. And so I'm really, I think that's the biggest milestone in my life is when I got to that conference and Jenny asked me, so what's your purpose? I didn't know what the devil she was talking about. I said, what do you mean purpose?
What's that?
Exactly.
Never thought about it.
Yeah. She had to explain it to me. So yes, I think that's what created Crystalline Moments. Crystalline is sparkly or clear, so moments of clarity. And that's where the book came from.
And tell us about what did you do to put that book together?
Oh, well, I sat down, I did interviews with different people, and I have different stories in the book about people that have lost loved ones. The second book, chapter after mine, is about a woman who lost 2 children 9 years apart. And then the next story is about a woman and her husband who won a $34 million lottery. So crystalline moments are positive and they can be very negative, but always, there is a gift or an opportunity, no matter how bad something is. And truly, I mean, Tom taught me that there's always something positive that comes out of everything. That's why we were talking a little bit ago about failure. There is no such thing as failure. Course correction is all it is. And
words matter. And that's such a great way of looking at it. Course correction.
Exactly. So that obviously was a pivotal point in my life. Definitely.
Bernice, back to you. We talked about Awesome Females. Is there something, I mean, you have had such a varied career. Are there a few other things you'd like to mention in terms of milestones as you look back?
Well, probably the thing that was the most life-changing moment is when I bought my first condominium, and I had begged and borrowed and used my credit cards, because you still could do that back then when Leslie, you and I were in our 20s.
Back in the day.
You could even get a credit card back then, but I had planned on teaching summer session to make my house payments, and they passed Prop 13, and all of a sudden I had no summer session, no income to pay for my house payments. And I'm thinking, what can I do to do, and the woman who sold me, who first showed me my condo, had rips in her blue jeans before it was fashionable, dirty VW, and she had $1 Million Club on her card. And that was something when prices were $50,000 to $70,000, $80,000. So I thought if she could sell $1 million worth of real estate, maybe I could sell 1 or 2 houses over the summer. I sold 2 my first month, 8 my second month, wondered why I got all these degrees. And then the interest rates went to 18 to 21%. So that for me was the big turning point. So I ended up doing, my background is in psychology, and I ended up doing my teaching job. I could teach early in the morning and at night, and I could go play real estate the rest of the time, which is what I did. I ended up running the training for 4,000 agents. Jack Douglas liked the idea of having a professor running his training. And we had 50 to 70% market share, Beverly Hills, Brentwood, Bel Air. And we were doing $1 billion in sales in the 90s. There's only about 12 or 15 companies that are doing that today in 2022. Right. So, that to me has really shaped me. And one of the most important things I got from Jack that has really guided me in terms of what I do at Inman, what I've done in my own business, is that after I spent a year writing the training for the company, our competitor across the street ripped it off within 90 days. I'm in tears. And Jack said to me, Bernice, the copycats will always imitate us, but all we have to do is be 6 months ahead of the competition, and we will own the market. And that is as true today as it was 30 years ago.
Right. And that
So
is,
it is, those are words to live by. You just need to be 6 months ahead. And I've chased my fair share of shiny objects and spent a lot of money on them. In fact, I just made a major change. I had been doing interviews with Greg McDaniel, and it turned out when I ended up spending 22 hours on a single article, because they had bounced it back to me 3 times, which they never do. And then there was something they wanted to change on the video. And I just said, that was one of those crystalline moments, Connie, where I need to stop doing this. This is not the best use of my time. And my husband, who's one of the finest business coaches in the world, it's one of the reasons I married him. But he said to me, you spent all this time on these new things. Why don't you focus on what what we've done well? And it just another crystalline moment. I'm decided for 22. I'm looking at my friend Marilyn, who helped me launch Awesome Female. She said no more than 3 things. She says you always stuff the automat. And for those of you who've never heard of that, this is an old term back probably the 40s, 50s, and 60s, where they had it wasn't a cafeteria. Instead, it was like, imagine a vending machine with fresh food and you could point which one you want. So that's what it was. But having said that, I stuff the automat all the time. So, the advice I had for those of you who are just loading up your schedule, number one, take time to take time off for you, because the memories you're going to have are the ones that you create outside of real estate. You're not going to remember those clients' names when, 15, 20, 30 years from now. Make that time for yourself, and then focus on what works, what has worked. And yes, you want to try what's new out there. But my 3 things this year, my writing and my training, Awesome Females, and, redoing, Waging War on Real Estate Discounters. That's it. Those are the 3 things. And
Right.
they've all been successful for me in the past.
It's like Deborah forcing us to pick one word, and my word for the year is discipline, because I'm semi-retired and all of a sudden I've got choices. What's that going to look like? But Connie, I want to ask you about, you're a FEMA instructor, you created the certification. Talk to us about what led that pivot into that area, because it's not exactly a natural evolution from the real estate coaching that you were doing.
Definitely is not. Well, I was really, really sick back in 2019. And it was whatever the COVID was back then. I was sick for like 2.5 months. And during that period of time, I'm sitting in my chair and I'm sicker than a dog. And I decided I'm going to quit. I'm going to quit everything I'm doing. My son had just moved to Bend, Oregon. I called him and I said, make sure the land you buy is big enough for a tiny house, because I'm moving on. And he was actually helping me plan the tiny house. I was figuring out what I had to get rid of a lot of stuff. And I called my realtor friend here in Vegas and I said, okay, get me the comps. I'm selling my house. And a friend of mine, Kirsten Shield, she was coming here to speak at the National Women's Business Owners as a keynote speaker. She called me on the phone and she said, so will you come and be my guest? And I said, sure. And so I show up and she said, so what are you doing? And I said, Kirsten, I'm quitting. And she looked at me and she put her finger in my face and she says, you are not kidding. I will not let you quit. I talk about you all the time since your husband passed away. You are not quitting. So I come home that afternoon and I'm sitting there and I'm like, I used to always have this thought. What does that FEMA stuff have to do with anything I'm doing today? And I had that thought that day. And I figured out all the stuff I tell other people to do. 3 things you're grateful for, 3 successes that you've had, and what is your vision for the end of the day. And I'm sitting there and I'm writing my vision, figured out I had not done any of that in 2.5 months. And all of a sudden I have that thought, what does that FEMA stuff have to do with anything? And I always wanted to write a book, because when you're out there as a FEMA inspector, tromping through the mud and whatever else that you're tromping through, you see how people really need to be made better prepared and more aware. So I'd always thought about this book. It's always been in the back of my head. And 3 weeks later, the California Association of Realtors education director sent out an email saying, these are topics that we're looking for. And one of them was disasters. And I wrote back, I said, nobody gets that but me. And so I wrote a simple little 3-hour course and I presented it at the expo in October of 2019. And then I also put together a panel of experts. I had a FEMA director, the head of the CERT program for LA County, the gentleman who was the association executive, and Santa Barbara, who'd gone through the mudslides and the fires, and then also a friend of mine who went through the Malibu fires. And as I'm moderating this panel, it was for the Professional Development Committee. And as I'm moderating this, I'm thinking, oh my, there's so much more to be said. So I sat down, I wrote out an outline, I talked with the education director, and she says, yeah, she says, I think this is going to be really good. And in January of 2020, I sat down and started writing, and it's a 4-course certification. And I used to joke about it because we cover everything. Like you need to know why it's so important for the real estate community, how you can benefit from it as a realtor. The whole program is about how I can help you shine in your community. And I'm writing this course, and I kind of joked. I was quarantined at some friend's house because they were both over 75. And I was quarantined with them. I'm sitting there and I'm writing about pandemics and mass shootings and floods and hurricanes and all this stuff. And I looked at her, I said, you know, if I can write about this being quarantined and not be depressed, I will never be depressed. So the certification was really it's truly a passion. It's at this point, it's going to be my legacy. I'm hoping in 2 years that the company will be going strong enough, and we'll have so many CCAM advisors out there that the world is going to know who to turn to. As real estate agents, it's a beautiful fit because you can improve your business and be giving back all at the same time. And 2 years from now, I'm going to turn it over to an amazing, awesome team that showed up. You know, when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, things just show up like they're supposed to.
Right.
And since the day I sat down to do this is what exactly has happened. I've had the right people come into my life. I've had the right resources come into my life. And in 2 years, I'm going to turn it all over to this amazing team. And I'm going to continue to write books and speak about it.
You know, and for everyone that's listening in the chat, we'll have links to the book, to the certification, to the Awesome Females Conference. So all of the things that we're talking about that are resources for you will have kind of where you need to go. So now I'd like to switch gears a little bit, and instead of talking about successes, I'd like to know, and I'm going to use the word failure just because I know you two are going to correct me, right? As a mid-course correction, this is not a failure, but forgive me. What have you, can you tell us a few things that didn't turn out quite the way you wanted, what you learned from it, how you recovered? A few years ago at the Woman Up conference, we talked about letting failure, Abby Wambach, right? Letting failure be your fuel. And I think in that respect, you can't really call it a failure. But Bernice, could you share a few of those moments with us for some perspective on that?
I'm going to go back to when I was 19 years old, and I was a senior at UCLA. And I was, trying to, excuse me, I think it was when I was 20, and I was working on my master's degree at that point. And I wanted to do my student teaching at El Camino College. And I was, and I had been volunteering there in their learning lab, and it was all set up. I could have done it. It was just great. And UCLA only had a contract with the LA Community College District, not with El Camino. And I had done advanced placement when I was 16 there, and El Camino was, 20 minutes from my house. And, I had my heart set on that. And the thing that happened is like Jane Kirstein, who was running the lab there, and it was one of the instructors. And we were working with adults, showing, getting adults who had reading problems, learning how to, teaching them to read, because they had these courses at the community colleges where you had to take English, and then, but you had to go through these other courses if you couldn't qualify for English 1. What happened was I was introduced to a woman named Loretta Newman, who turned out to be one of the most important mentors in my life. And Loretta was probably in her 60s at that point in time. And she had been a pioneer in using physiological psychology techniques to teach kids to read and adults to read. And I ended up working with Loretta, which laid the foundation for me to really understand, I was able, I taught speed reading and reading classes for 13 years at the college level. But what happened was it was the relationship where I did my student teaching at LA Harbor that opened up a part-time opportunity to teach at LA Harbor, which then resulted in me teaching full-time at West LA College, where I started teaching when I was 23 years old. So what
It all worked
happened
out.
there? So, and I fought tooth and nail. I mean, I went after that with everything I had. So it wasn't a failure. It's only a failure, Leslie, if you don't get up and try again. And I remember one of the quotes from the women up interviews that I did, and I don't remember who said it. She says, I either win or I learn.
Right.
And that I love that quote. I either win or I learn. So, it's like, if you make a mistake, learn from it and go on. And Connie, what you were saying earlier was incredibly important. When you're on the right path, the doors go flying open. If you keep hitting roadblock after roadblock and you're looking in that corner, turn around and look in a different direction.
Right. Because sometimes it shouldn't be that hard. One
It
of the
is.
old
It's
adages is that I've learned the hard way is when people tell you who they are, believe them, right? Don't keep seeing.
That's
who
another
you wanna
lesson.
see, right? So
Don't keep
Connie,
trying
I'd love to
you know,
hear some of your thoughts on things that maybe didn't go according to plan and how you did your mid-course correction.
Well, I definitely call them course corrections. When I was in my mid-20s, I was in the insurance business. I had a partner that we were master GAs. I was actually Rookie of the Year for Metropolitan Life Insurance in 1979. Now that dates me back a ways, but we had opened up this agency and we had master general agents. We had about 100 of them. And being the naive farm girl from Nebraska that I was, trusting and being totally, I believed everybody that was going to do exactly what they said they were going to do, right? Well, we went out and we got these major contracts, and my quote unquote partner neglected to tell me that I wasn't on any of the contracts. And he got involved with drugs. And one night he came in and it was just a mess. And I decided that night I was walking out the door. I walked out the door and I went to the contract to the reinsurance people and tried to get contracts. Well, they wouldn't give me a contract because I was not one of the partners. As it turned out, he had not put me on any of the contracts. I lost $250,000 in 1981. And I basically had a nervous breakdown. My friend who had just moved to Portland said, you need to get away from your situation. And so I went up to visit her. And while I was there, I walked off the airplane. It was like walking into that perfect house. It just felt right. I was dating Tom at the time. And I called him and I said, you have two choices. Either you move to Portland or we split up. And I called my kids and you have two choices. You either move to Portland, Oregon, or you move to Muskogee, Oklahoma, which is where their dad lived. And they were truly Valley boys at the time. So they didn't want to go either one. But the bottom line is I ended up 2 years later, I ended up writing my ex-partner a thank you letter. And it was the first time I realized that everything happens for a positive reason. I would not have moved to Portland. I would not have married Tom, or I might have, but who knows? And I would not have started off on this other path. So I think that's why it's so important to recognize that when something isn't going according to plan, either the vision needs to change or you need to change what you're doing. And that's just a course correction. I did Airbnb for many years, and I had a guy who was an internationally known rock climber. He's in my Crystalline Moments book. And he talks about how when you're looking at the Dawn Wall in Yosemite, he was the one that built the route, and you look up and you look down. Well, you're not going to define that route right away. You're going to start climbing and then you're going to fall. And you start swinging and you say, okay, this is where the route needs to go. So it's just simply a course correction.
Right. That is so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you both for being so forthcoming on that. Now, I think there's a quote that says, you can make plans, but God will laugh. I can't remember exactly how it goes, but there's no doubt for me from where I am in my life. I look back, and if I'm my 20 or 30-year-old self, I couldn't have predicted any of this. Like, none of it's turned out the way I probably thought. And in most cases, it's all been much more wonderful, you know. But I'd love to hear your perspective on 20 or 30 years ago. Where did you see yourself going? And are there any other components that got you here, Bernice?
Well, I want to go back to when I was a senior in high school and just had turned 17, and my dad was almost died, and he was the doctor said after being told for 6 weeks he wasn't going to live through the night from all the problems he had, that he walked out of the hospital alive, was, you know, but he still had very serious health problems. And, you know, if he had died, I would have had to support my mom and my brother because my mom couldn't have worked. So I was in a, you know, I finished UCLA 2 years early. I just was on a tear to get, you know, to get out. And my dad, when I had started to UCLA, he wanted me to learn how to write. He wanted me to major in English, and my heart was set on doing psychology. So I'm taking all these psychology courses, but I was so happy my father was there that you know, I went ahead and took the courses and did what he asked me to do. And as soon as I got to grad school, it's just like, bam, you know, psychology. I got my master's in English, but my PhD is in ed psych. So I did my dissertation, the writing gets put on hold. So fast forward to 1998, when I leave California, and I'm going to start doing you know, going to launch a real estate coach. And I decide that I'm going to start doing this little newsletter, you know, we called it Real Clues. And I started doing that. And then my friend Joanne Foslin told me she was writing for a group called Realty Times, which is what was a lot of agents were, you know, very active over there. And that publication is still in existence. So she introduced me to the editor and I got hired over there. So I'm sending her, you know, these little articles. And then Joanne says, I'm not interested in this, but there's this blind ad for somebody who wants a real estate writer. She just wanted to look into it. So I did. And I submitted some stuff, and it turned out it was from Mark Davison, who was working for Brad Inman at the time.
Right.
And I never in my wildest dreams ever thought that I would be writing a weekly column. Here it is. It's, you know, we just did the 1000th edition of Real Clues in December of 2021.
Wow.
And you know, and my anniversary with Brad was in October of 2021. It's 20 years with him. And I never in my wildest dreams thought that you know, I remember some of the people in my high school classes and stuff were interested in journalism. Yeah,
no, psychology.
You know, never thought that I was going to spend my life sitting in front of a computer writing columns for somebody, but that was the biggest surprise that I never saw coming. But sometimes, you know, there's wisdom that your parents have, or that there's someone that, you know, and when someone feels so strongly, I don't know where this comes from, but I'm so glad I listened to my dad.
Right. Oh, that's what a gift. Coni, what about you? Did you ever foresee this?
Never.
20, 30 years ago, where did you think you'd be today? Or did you even think about it?
Oh, you know, we had the home inspection business, and we sold that, and we started the home inspection business when you had to explain to a real estate agent what a home inspection was. And they would say, why do we want that? And when we sold that business, I had to figure out what was next. And online ed was one of the partners in online ed was one of our partners in the home inspection business. So we went on to do education. But where I am today, I mean, really, truly, Tom's passing is the biggest pivotal moment. But as I was thinking about this question, just a little bit ago, I was thinking, you know, I've recently had another pivot, and Leslie, I think you can relate to this. As a matter of fact, you and I used to have conversations about you being divorced for so many years, and Tom being gone, and how there was not going to be any more men in our lives, right?
Right.
And I have to say, over these last 2 years, I've always said never, 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 and you never say never, because that's exactly what's going to happen. And I think just looking at my new relationship and looking at what I'm doing today, and I'm definitely pivoting. And I feel younger today than I did when I was 50.
Yeah.
And I couldn't be more grateful. Part of it is because of the people like you guys and the other women in Woman Up, and as well as awesome females, everybody that is surrounding me now are giving me life and new. And now I have a focus. I know where I'm going. I know what I want to do. And I love talking about it on my to 70 and beyond. I love being able to share that you can be any age and do anything you want to do. And you can turn back the time. You can go backwards as long as you're living your purpose, as long as you're grateful and you're celebrating your successes. So I've had so many pivots. Like I said earlier, 9 different careers, basically. And yet I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing right now. And I'm so eternally grateful for that.
Oh, that's a wonderful story, and I'm so happy for you. And I could tell even before you told me what happened. You know, can really feel it. It's wonderful to share that, the three of us sharing this experience of being with someone that, you know, really makes a life, you know, or a different life, you know, for sure. So what advice do you have for our younger cohort that are, you know, maybe just beginning their careers, or kind of midway through? Any advice you might have on how to pivot, how to grow, what it feels like to become a new person, what kind of support you needed, just anything like that, Bernice?
A couple of things is like, I like to say, watch the energy, because when you're on the right path, as we mentioned before, the door is open. But I'm going to hearken to some advice from one of my 70-something neighbors where I live. And their motto is he's Italian, and the motto is taste the kitchen, which means live every day to the fullest. And whether it's in your business or your personal life, but take time to make those memories. You know, like I said before, you're not going to remember the names of those clients. You will remember the things that you do with your family and friends. And the other piece is look at how you can serve the people in your community. You know, not just business wise, but where can you give back, whether it's your time, money, or in some other way. The process of giving is what triggers abundance. I ran the training for 4,000 agents for a Beverly Hills based company. And I had the custom house behind the gates of Beverly Hills that I built as a single woman, had the jack, the designer clothes, the whole thing. And my marriage everything was a mess. And the bottom line was, when I met Marilyn and my husband, Byron, it's like, I learned that is when you give back, that's where the satisfaction is. So put that piece into what you do with your business. Your business will succeed by on its own when you use that. It's magical how it works. I don't know any other way to describe it.
Right. 100%. Connie, do you have some advice to share?
Well, I think so. I talked about crystalline moments. We have crystalline moments all day long. And instead of listening to our head, I used to argue with my inner voice and have disagreements. And that's the reason I had this partner that I had, was a lesson, right? So every single day we have a crystalline moment where we can take this path or this path, and listen to your inner voice. Take the time to listen to what it's telling you and then go in that direction. And I totally agree with Bernice. When you are giving back or when you are serving others, then that's when the magic happens. And it may not be that. Maybe you're thinking you're doing it for your career. Maybe you think you're doing it for your personal life, but you're not. The way you're going to get paid back is not necessarily the way that you're giving. So give with full intention of just giving to make somebody else happy. And by doing that, you will be served.
Words to live by, ladies and gentlemen, words to live by. I'd love to know what your next chapters look like. If you've thought about the next few years, if there are, I know, Bernice, you talked about the 3 things for 2022, but looking a little bit further, are there any goals, visions that you are looking forward to?
Well, the big thing in my life is whenever I can go on a big cruise, and on March 16th, we are leaving from Buenos Aires, going to Rio, to Recife in Brazil, over across the Atlantic to Dakar, Senegal, Casablanca, onto Granada in Spain,
Oh my
and
God.
Barcelona. And then the big one for 2023, my Takes the Kitchen neighbors over here, we're going with them, and we are going to Antarctica on one of the brand new Viking ships. The one we're going on, it hasn't launched yet.
Oh
So
my
that's
goodness.
a year from now. So I am trip of a lifetime. And I'm so excited. I can't even tell you. So there's going to be more cruises, and I'm still going to continue to write, and I'm going to be more focused on doing the things I really want to do, which means awesome females, woman up, doing my columns and my training.
Wonderful. Connie, what about you?
Well, I am super excited about, I have a new book called When the Unthinkable Happens, Be Prepared, Be Ready, that is ready to launch. And I wrote it. It's the book I wanted to write when I was a FEMA inspector and trainer. It's designed for consumers and for businesses. And it is a perfect gift for anybody that wants to make a difference in their community. So I'm super excited about launching that. And then there's another book that I started writing about 4 years ago, Crystalline Voices, Women Leaders in Real Estate, which both of you are in, along with another 25 other ladies. It's going to include 3 national women presidents, FNER presidents, as well as I think 9 or 10 national presidents from Women's Council, and some other outstanding ladies, which the book got put on hold because of this whole crisis thing that happened. So I'm looking forward to helping to publish that later on this year, or at least the beginning of next year. And just I finally am finding some balance in my life. And I'm looking forward, what I really want to do this year and next year, and from this point forward, is do a lot of speaking, speaking about my passions and what it's like to be 70, and how you can help the world be a better place. And then writing. And I'm hoping in 2 years, that's all I'm doing, is speaking and writing. So I'm looking forward to it.
Wonderful. The future looks bright. Well, I'm not done yet. I have a few rapid fire questions that can be sort of shorter answers, but I think I'm really interested to hear what you both have to say. So my first rapid fire question is, how do you define success? Bernice. Connie.
Okay. For me, a success is when I am the happiest, and I have happiness and joy in my life. And the one thing that I've learned is you can't have success unless you come from a point of happiness. So I try to celebrate and really enjoy the joy that happiness brings, and that's what creates success in my life. And that's what I'm serving others.
It's interesting that you asked about success, because I shifted from really being focused on success, which is about me, to being focused on service instead. And
right. Beautiful. Beautiful. I love that. Okay. If there's one memory that stands out from the almost 2 years that we've been under the pandemic, could you share a memory that will stick with you for a long time?
Let's see, in answering your question, one of the things that was the most amazing to me is I watched how organizations like the California Association of Realtors and so many other people and companies throughout the industry pivoted so quickly to have the highest, the most sales ever in 21, which is, I'm just flabbergasted in this market with all the restrictions and issues.
Yes.
That this, the people in this business are so resilient no matter what's thrown at them.
Right. Agree 100% on that one. Connie.
For me, I think it's the fact that I actually wrote the certification. I mean, I was supposed to be going speaking and doing stuff in March. And if I'd have done that, I would have had to not be able to finish writing the certification. So that was but I think one of the most fun things is I was quarantined. I spent 12 weeks at my friend's house, her and her brother. And every night we had an amazing, amazing meal, and we shared things that we would have never shared. And I think that's true of so many families and so many people, and I agree with Bernice, how this industry has pivoted that's worth a book all into its own. Maybe the three of us could put that book together. Just how amazing it is that how people have come together, how people have left one career and now they've found a way, they're baking bread or they're whatever it is they're doing. And I think that's the real celebration of what's happened and the amazing gift. But for me, it was being able to write the certification and having that beautiful time with my friends.
Beautiful, beautiful. So what is one piece of advice that you would give to your 25-year-old self before you started your career? So maybe a little bit younger for both of you, but any advice that you wish you had had back then?
I wish I had gotten to not chasing the, that kind of Beverly Hills idea of success and had made the shift to service earlier.
Yeah.
For me, it is, I was very sick as a young child. I shouldn't be here. The only reason I'm here is the Mayo Clinic. I was supposed to be dead between 14 and 16. And so I was very meek and very intimidated, and because I had a rare kidney disease. And for me, I would tell that young girl that she really is enough and that she really is okay. And that her life is going to turn out to be something of beauty and wonder. And yes, there's ups and downs, but the bottom line is that you're going to survive and you're going to live well.
Beautiful. All right, just a few more. I'd like to know if you have a morning ritual. I've always felt that, the morning is my best time of the day. Anything is possible, and it's where I decide and hopefully do set it up for a good day later on. So I do have specific things I do. What about the both of you?
Leslie, the answer to that question is absolutely yes. In the morning and before I go to bed at night, before I start work in the morning and before before I walk away from my office in the evening, I do my gratitudes for the day. I do a series of affirmations about what I want. I'm affirming what's right and that I'm happy, healthy, I'm content. I'm committed to my service, to doing the best possible things that I can. And, one of the things I've started doing, which has really helped me, is and for those who are not religious, this isn't a fit for you, but for those of you who are, I will to do thy will today and tomorrow, every day, dear God. So that's it. And that has really, it's just brought me more peace, more contentment. And it's just being in alignment when you kind of, like, I think it's what in AA they say, let go, let God. And
right. Beautiful. Thank you. Connie, what about you?
I have it's something that I actually teach other people. I have a 10-minute routine I do in the morning. First thing I do is meditate for about 5 minutes. And sometimes I listen to a meditation. Sometimes I just read my own vision, because there's no better meditation than your own vision. I take some deep breaths, and then the 3 things I'm grateful for and 3 successes that I've had the day before. And then I think about what the vision is by the end of the day. So I'm so happy and grateful that I am going to have this amazing conversation with Bernice Ross and Leslie Appleton Young today. And I'm so grateful. It's going to be so wonderful. This or something better still. And that's pretty much what I do.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. You guys are just amazing. Before we close out, is there anything else that you would like to share with the community? Any, I don't know, books, podcasts, resources, conferences? Obviously, the Awesome Females Conference this summer, the books that you have been doing, Connie, but anything else that we should talk about?
I just want to say something about Awesome Females. It is the only place where women who are in leadership, this is not an agent conference, it is a leadership conference for women who hold leadership positions, whether it's WCR, if you're a leader in your community, and even if you're fairly new in your leadership journey or you've been in it forever, like some of us have. This is a place, and I was, this meant so much to me when Tammy Bonnell said, this is the only safe place that I can go to have a real conversation about, the issues that I confront.
Beautiful. Connie, anything?
Well, I have to reiterate about what Bernice just said, because Awesome Females is a safe space, and the friendships and the camaraderie, people can go there, they can talk about a problem, they can talk about something wonderful in their life, and they know that it's going to stay confidential. They know that they're going to have fun. The first time I went, Marilyn was still there, and it was an amazing experience. I was expecting more like a real estate conference, right? And it was anything but. It was more like a retreat. And Maryland was amazing. It was one where Bernice had brought all these dishes, and we threw dishes.
Anchor
And
workshop, yes.
Bernice was very subdued and being the classy lady that she is in the beginning. And we kept throwing plates. And by the end of they would go into this big barrel and you were getting rid of stuff, right? And by the last plate that she threw, it was like whammo. And so it's just a wonderful place. I would like to recommend a book because it's by Sean Aker. He was a professor at Harvard, and he wrote a book called The Big Advantage. And it talks about how important it is for us to be happy before we become successful. And if we can follow that philosophy, then that is going to make all the difference in the world. And of course, please read my When the Unthinkable Happens, Be Prepared, Be Ready.
Yes. But I remember Sean Akers in his TED Talk. That was just beautiful. I still remember his sister falling off the top bunk, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Just to go back to Awesome Females for a minute, I don't know if I've ever told Bernice this, but I think that kind of my hot button is active listening, and listening to really listen, not waiting to talk. And my first, although I didn't realize it at the time, introduction to that was at Awesome Females. And it was when we passed the feather around in a circle, and the person with the feather spoke and everyone else listened. And it was a very profound experience. As you've heard, this is not a normal real estate conference. I don't think I've ever had a feather at Inman or any of the other conferences that I've been to, but it was life-changing. And then I want to also tell you, Connie, that one of the things that really helped me see myself differently is when you asked to interview me for your book, and you didn't want to talk about the market. You didn't want to talk about economics. You wanted to talk about me. And it was the first time it kind of occurred to me that I might have, this is part of my my course correction, that I might have learned something and experienced things that might be useful for someone else. So I want to thank you both for those pivotal moments in my life, that helped change me. So thank you both. This has just been wonderful. I love you both. I am so honored to have you as my first guest for 2022. And I look forward to seeing you this summer, and just take care, everyone. And I'll see you next month.